Hi, welcome back to Soul Speak. I'm Meg Michaelson. Thank you so much for being here. As I have said this before, I hope you never get tired of me saying how grateful I really am for you listening and sharing, and I'm hoping you find it of value. This has been an incredible, powerful, for me, monumental week. So I might get a little emotional, and I'm going to be okay with that. So this past week, I've had two daughters that had babies. I want to talk about this because the importance of having faith. I feel like in my lifetime, I've developed a strong faith. However, I get nervous and have anxiety and struggle sometimes, just like everybody else. And this past week was a test, absolutely. So my daughters found out, two of my daughters found out they were pregnant on the same day. That was, of course, 9 months ago. And that was such an exciting day. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, wow, they're both going to have babies, different due dates, but within a week. And they both live in Colorado. Of course, I live in Wisconsin. And how am I going to navigate that? Because I like to be involved in my kids' lives. My kids' lives are really important to me. And me being a mentor to them and a good role model, and also being there to support them through their journey and having opportunities, to be part of a birth. I don't know how many of you have had that, but it's amazing. Puts everything into a perspective that is unlike anything else. And so this past week, I was supposed to fly out last Wednesday and no babies. And I thought, no, I'm not supposed to fly. So the day before that, I changed my flight or just canceled it. And I was coming home that night. Well, I'm going to back up because about a week before that, I had this message that said, things are going to be a little chaotic around this. However, it's all going to work out. And so I had a really deep sense of knowing that came to me when I was driving somewhere. Still, of course, we get a little nervous. I get canceled my flight last Wednesday, and coming home from work that night, I had a really strong urge to be there by the 8th. And as I pulled into the street my home is on the corner, were 8 deer sitting under an apple tree. Deer are very significant. I don't know if you've ever heard the word totem animal, but the deer are my totem animal. That my whole life have been the most important animal to me, and my dad's connection with me. And since he's passed, I've had a lot of wonderful deer connections that have been otherworldly. So when I saw 8 deer and I already had that nudge, be there by the 8th, I knew in my being I had to be there by the 8th. So I booked my ticket for the night of the 7th and got here, picked up from the airport for my daughter, Emma. We drove back to her house and we had lunch with my kids, drove back to her house. And that night at 12:30, she and her husband woke me up and said their water broke. I wasn't sure why I had to be here by the 8th. I wasn't even sure which baby was going to be born because they were a week apart. And my second daughter had her first baby a week early. So, but I knew in my being, be here by the 8th. And sure enough, she went into labor on the 8th and had her baby at 2:53 in the afternoon on the 8th. I was part of it. It was beautiful. I was so glad and grateful to be there. I went home and took care of her cats and ate my dinner and went to bed. And I knew to keep my phone on. I don't sleep with my phone on. I just don't. And I had this nudge, sleep with your phone on. I got a call at 2:30 in the morning on the 9th from my other daughter, and her water broke. So 2 nights after midnight, her water broke. And I drove to Denver. My first daughter lives in Boulder in the mountains. And I don't like driving in the mountains at night. I'm not comfortable. It stresses me out. So when I got up at 2:30 in the morning, knowing I'm going to drive through the mountains by myself in pitch black, and it was a little icy going to Denver, I felt this overwhelm of, nope, it's going to be okay. And I wasn't nervous a bit. I got in the car, drove, felt this complete calm, got to the hospital, and she had her baby at 9:11 in the morning on the 9th. And when we calculated, it was 18 hours and 18 minutes apart. And I had been a little bit, I guess my nerves were around. I want to be there for both of my daughters. So please let me be able to be in town because I really could only stay a week. And I wanted to have it set up where I could be at both births and still have time after to help them when they get home. Big ask, right? And since they were due a week apart. But my work schedule is also pretty full all the time. And so to balance all of that was tough for me. And as I've said before, I'm a recovering pleaser. So it's even a little more tough. And these are my kids and my grandbabies. So it's so important for me to be there. So how this all worked out, they were born 18 hours and 18 minutes apart, which comes to the number 9, which is my favorite number. And it's also the number of humanitarianism and faith and spirituality. And it was so destined. It was so meant to be. And every one of my kids and I were in awe of how that all happened. Because before I left, when this was all getting close to the due dates, I asked my higher guides and my higher power, please let them have their babies no more than 2 to 3 days apart so I can still have time with each of them. Well, got even better. It was 18 hours and 18 minutes apart. So it was a whirlwind, but I was able to be part of both. And having those experiences, well, it was unbelievably joyful and exhausting all at the same time. But then driving through the mountains, previously I would have had fear. Previously I would have been nervous and clutching that steering wheel in the middle of the night on some icy patches. But I didn't. I felt this overwhelm of faith because, remember, I had this weird nudge a couple weeks prior to all of this, or a week before, that this was going to work out. There was divine timing at play. And then seeing the 8 deer and knowing in my being I was supposed to be here by the 8th. And then that's when Emma, my older daughter, had her baby, her first baby. So that piece of fate and destiny and divine timing, is that real? Or is that just happenstance? It's up to you. For me, in my belief system, it's real. And the more I allow that to lead my life, the easier my life becomes. Still not easy. Just like you guys, I have a schedule. I have people that count on me. I have bills to pay. But when we step out of the worry and turn it over, things can happen, which I call magic. We let the magic happen. We let destiny, we let divine timing take over. When you think about numbers, I'm a big number person. I pay attention to numbers because there are so many synchronistic events with numbers. And when I looked at their birth charts, because I did after they were born, Jules on the 8th and Autumn on the 9th, I pulled up their birth charts. And there's so many cool connections and synchronicities between the two of them and their birth charts. And when you start to look at numbers, numbers is another sign from our higher self, our higher power. It's the way we can get messages. Knowing there were 8 deer and I knew I had to be there on the 8th, it was good confirmation. One grandchild was born and 18 hours and 18 minutes, enough time for me to get 4 hours of sleep in, get up in the middle of the night, drive from Boulder to Denver through the mountains, get there at the hospital with so much time to spare, and be there at my granddaughter Autumn's birth. And she was born at 9/11, hugely significant. And even more significant, remember, they were born 18 hours and 18 minutes apart. Start to look at the possibility of having divine guidance through numbers, of having the synchronistic events through numbers. Now, anybody can look up what is the meaning of the number 9? What is the meaning of the number 8? And it makes sense. It makes sense. And it's all part of course, having a belief in more than what we can see, having a belief in more than is concrete. So if you have a belief in a greater power, is it possible to stretch that and have a belief in some of the numbers and the signs? Do you ever ask for signs? Do you ever look at the numbers? There are so many ways we can pay attention to the numbers. and the signs. This led me back to, again, that confirmation of, okay, I just had this beautiful nudge ahead of time to pay attention. I paid attention. I let the flow happen. And it all manifested with incredible calm and ease, just as it was supposed to. Why? Because I got out of the way. I could have made a human choice. I could have stressed about it and not changed my flight or not followed the nudge, and then I would have missed the birth of one of my grandchildren. I could have gone into fear and not drove through the mountains in the middle of the night and missed the birth of my other grandchild. But I didn't. I stayed in faith. I stayed in faith and wonder. And this led me really back to that state of planning and living in too much planning and living in that balance of flow and planning. Stepping back into wonder, I was holding my grandson. Well, I'm going to hold my grandchildren as much as I can while I'm here, and holding my grandson, who was just a few days old. And as they are opening their eyes and looking around in that state of wonder, everything is new. As I said earlier, I'm not always in faith and wonder. I'm human. But the more that I recognize that, the more that we all recognize that, when you walk in a room, what if you decide to walk in the room and really look around? Even if it's a room you've been in a million times. What if you step outside and take a breath and look at the trees and notice things you haven't? Maybe open your ears and pause and see if you can hear any birds. See if you can hear the wind. Puts everything in a calm state. And then we're not only calm, but we're open to any nudges, because the nudges don't happen when we're in a state of stress, remember. And during this time, right before both babies were born, I had this dream. So dreams are another way that we can stay in divine faith. I had this dream of mice, lots and lots and lots and lots of mice. And I was telling my girlfriend, my dear girlfriend in California, and she's like, let's look up mice. Sure enough, mice was really about looking at the greater picture. Let go of the details. Let go of the details. Look at the greater picture. What was my goal? My goal was to be here for both of them, for both of the births. And when I just put that out to the universe, help me create that experience. I'm going to get out of the way. So paying attention to what's going on in your dream world too. And a beautiful gift, well, I received so many beautiful gifts this week, but another beautiful gift I received, because even after the babies were born, now I want to spend time at one house and time at the other house. And I have a window of time that I'm working with, because I want to be back home and I need to be back home for some of my work commitments. And so as I'm starting to stress about how am I going to let my daughters know I can't stay as long as they hope I can stay. And I started to feel, and that's when I start to have a little bit of tightness in my chest. And that's when I start to have, if I let it go, I'll get that ease. That ease comes in and says, it's okay. It's going to work out. Because as much as I want to do it all, as much as I want to give my children and my grandchildren as much time as I can, I have parameters and boundaries, just like all of us. And my children have been in such gratitude, and their spouses have been in such gratitude, that my dis-ease around not being able to meet everybody's needs was all for naught. They're all just so grateful for any time I've been able to give them. And so it's just been a beautiful testament to getting out of the way. It works out when we let go, step back, breathe. In life, there's many things we cannot plan. And the more we get stuck on it having to go a certain way, the more we get stuck on having to have a plan, the more we really do mess up what could be incredibly beautiful. So my focus this week has been on family, not on work. Love my work, love my family. And which means I was coming into this podcast with, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about, other than I really wanted to focus on this beautiful divine timing that happened. That was so incredible. So I asked my kids, Can you give me some examples of when you felt faith or when you felt like the faith was gone and you got the nudge? And my daughter Liz had a great example of, she thought she was in labor on Tuesday night. This was before I came, and was offered the chance. She went in because she thought she was in labor. So she went into the hospital a week early, and actually over a week early, and was offered the chance at the hospital to kickstart the process with medical intervention. But her body and her beautiful soul said, nope, it's time. I need to hold off. I need to let things progress naturally. And I'm going to trust in the timing, in divine timing. And sure enough, the night after her mom got here, her water broke, and that really confirmed to her, made it abundantly clear that she made the right choice, that she followed her inner guidance system. And then when she got to the hospital after her water broke, she was given the choice to augment the process through Pitocin or active movement, or to rest and let her body do what it needed to do. And this is her second birth, so she had a little more trust in the process. And she's really grown to listen to the wisdom of her body. So she did. And she had her labor wasn't actually that long, maybe a total from start to finish, 9 hours. A lot of those felt just like Braxton Hicks, so they weren't real strong until later on. And then she had the baby in 11 minutes from the time she started pushing. 11 minutes. It's incredible. But that was really because she listened to the guidance and she allowed her body and her soul to do the work. The delivery was so smooth and she felt so empowered all through the process. And her words, this went better than I ever could have planned for. And my daughter Liz is absolutely someone that does like to plan for the most part. But she also understands the concept of faith. We have to have faith. And she also really wanted to share that she was nervous about trusting herself. She felt the doubts. She felt that she didn't know when the labor was going to be, and was she going to go past her due date? But it all escalated so quickly. And the water breaking and going into a fast and beautiful labor was what she needed to continue to trust her guidance system. We want to pay attention to when we are trusting, when we get the affirmation, when our divine guidance is really being listened to. Celebrate that. Pay attention to that. That's how we can stay in faith when life feels stressful. The more we acknowledge when we allowed ourselves to feel divine guidance, when we allowed ourselves to take those risks and let go of the need to control, the more we allow that, the more we acknowledge it, that becomes our new pathway. So when we're stressful, when we're stressed out, how can we notice the signs? Well, we got to breathe first, right? It's really hard to notice the signs when we are in an anxiety mode. My sister Kathleen years ago was in the ocean and she was standing and she had a physical sensation. A way for us to do this is to notice the physical sensations in the body, calm versus anxiousness. My sister Kathleen was in the water about up to her waist. This is years ago. And she just had this strange feeling to step back a few feet. No reason, she just did it. And as she did that, right in front of her was this huge hammerhead shark. Probably wouldn't have hurt her, maybe, because it was going to bump right into her. But she followed that nudge, that sensation. My son-in-law, Mark, was telling me he's had a lot of nudges around when animals are near. He was biking by himself one time and he felt a strong unease. He bikes in the mountains. And he felt this really strong unease, but he didn't divert his path because his body was saying, maybe don't go forward. But he didn't divert his path. However, he did stay in tune. He did stay in attention mode. And in front of him crossed a large cat, like a mountain lion. And he was able to, because we've been paying attention, to notice it and to pull back. And that's happened to him multiple times when he and my daughter were hiking. He had that same feeling. It's like, let's hold back a minute. And sure enough, a mountain lion crossed the path ahead. We get those. Our soul and our body are in tune and always working together. So pay attention. Ask yourself, pause right now, take a breath. When have you had a physical sensation in your body that was alerting you to shift your course, even briefly, alerting you to shift your course? And now Mark will even get signs when it's an animal he wants to see. He has this cool sixth sense around animals. And he's like, I think there's a deer in the yard. Sure enough, he looks out the window, there's a deer. Or I feel the fox near. Why? Because he acknowledges it. He pays attention to it. He's growing it without even recognizing or intentionally growing it. The more we give something that is helpful to us, the more attention we give it, the greater that becomes a new pathway. So he really likes that, and he's continuing to use that. Because remember, when we get stressed out about something, our bodies want to go into, I don't have a plan, or my plan's not going to work. We need to make a plan. Or we can step away for a moment and take some breaths and let the information come to us. We don't always have enough information to make a plan. And certainly things that we want to plan, we're not the only human. Our lives are not in isolation. We are like a stone that you throw in the water and there's a ripple outward. So every time we think we have a plan, it doesn't mean it's going to work. So we want to be in the balanced state of plan, knowing it's okay if it doesn't, because that means something better is actually going to happen. Even if it comes through some sort of catastrophe, like a job loss. We can go really into a dive, or we can say, okay, I'm feeling stress around that. Perhaps something better is going to happen. So remember, the more we allow ourselves to notice and let go of the stress when our plans don't work, the more we go into the possibility that something better is going to happen. Now we are creating a gratitude field. Now we're creating a possibility field. Now we're creating more positive energy, because what we send out is what we get back. So if we're always thinking the bad is going to happen, most likely the bad keeps happening. But when we start to shift that, it's amazing how much goodness can come our way. Our thoughts and our feelings can open the channels forward into more abundance in all levels, or into more stress. Up to us. Another way, other than the physical sensation, and there's many ways to step back into faith and pay attention again, is dreams. When my daughter Emma was hoping to get pregnant, she had a dream that she was, because she was trying and it wasn't happening. And it was making her sad and a little stressed. But she had a dream. She had a dream that she was, and she had a dream that she was going to have a little boy. The next day, she took a pregnancy test. She was pregnant. And a few days ago, 9 months later, or whatever, how many months that was, she had a beautiful little boy. She paid attention to that dream, and she knew in her being it was going to be okay. It's been so cool to ask my kids these stories, by the way, because we don't always talk about this. I also got a great story from my son, Alex. He developed his own business. He's a contractor and woodworker in Colorado, Boulder, Denver area. Beautiful woodwork, by the way. Wooden Forge, look him up. And he has been building this career for years, and sometimes it's abundant and sometimes it's dry. He said the last few months, though, he has struggled with consistent jobs. But he also felt this really strong premonition about work. And that premonition continued to be his guidance, so he wasn't so stressed about it. He was really feeling that strength of the premonition, and it came true. So he said last fall, he started to get this strong sense that things were going to shift. and that he would start to see signs of it in 2 to 3 weeks. It was that clear to him. He had a premonition in fall, and he paid attention to that. He noticed it, and he said he even journaled about it. It came to him in a way that he felt, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write this down. That he would start to see signs of it 2 to 3 weeks after that premonition. And near the end of that 3-week mark, he suddenly got flooded with potential work. And that was enough and more than enough to get him through the rest of the year. And now, when he goes into any time where there's not maybe enough of a job, or he's between jobs, or he's waiting to hear an answer, he can go back and look in his journal because it's written down. And he can go back in his memory bank and remember, yep, I know there's something greater out there that's working with me. I know it. And I know if I stay in faith, if we allow our inner strength to rise up and lead us, and that's not always easy, but the more we allow it, the easier it becomes. The more we allow it, the easier it becomes. As I've said before, every day, every moment of every day, we create with our words and our thoughts the energy that we're sending out. And my belief is it's probably impossible, well, at least for me, maybe not for you, to stay in faith 100% of the time every single day. But what if we would do the 80-20 rule? Or what if we would do the 90-10 rule? Or some days, what if we can do 50-50? Whatever it is, stay in faith with our thoughts and our words and our actions. Because the more we do that, the greater we are in our physical being. We have better health. We have better relationships. We feel more peace. We can accept more that the universe is providing. And remember, it doesn't always fall out of the sky. Sometimes there are people that are working through and with the universe. So we want to be open to receiving. We want to be open to asking for help. And I want to be careful that I'm not minimizing mental health, because sometimes our anxiety or our depression can be so big for people that they aren't strong enough at that time to choose to breathe and step out of stress and into faith. We need to get support for that. And yes, our family and our friends are here to support us, but we also want to be okay turning to our physicians, the mental health fields, practitioners, both in alternative and in Western. It is so important to get the help we need, because when we allow that help, then it's easier to get back on track with faith. I've talked about unconditional love in the past, and unconditional love, let's stretch it, because unconditional love for self and others means I'm here for you, for self, and I can't always fix it on my own, or I can't fix it for you, but I will be part of your support team. I will be part of the village, because when you're really struggling, it is so important to make sure you are creating a village, not just one person, and certainly not self, because we are meant to have a support team, not one support person, a support team. So when you're feeling strong enough, that's when you start to create the village. Way harder to create the village when you're down in the dumps or when you're really anxious. But when you're feeling good, that's when you create the support team. And then when you start to dive, because everybody does sometimes, we rely on our support team. Before we go to the depths, it's harder when we get to the depths. However, there are so many alternatives as well as good medications that can help you. So I wish you a beautiful week, and I hope you are having as much joy, love, emotion, incredible experience as I have this past week. On an astrological level, we are now stepping into true 2024. Of course, the calendar, our calendar says 2024 is January 1, but in astrological terms, that starts during Aries season, which is coming up the end of March. So we're moving into the spring equinox, and we're moving into the true start of the astrological 2024. A lot of fire coming, but right now we're in this beautiful Pisces season. So this is dreamy. This is a lot of potent dreams. So this would be a great time for you to start writing down your dreams. I'm getting a ton of really good information on life's guidance. I've had really incredible dreams, but they are helping me make decisions for the future. So pay attention to your dreams. And as always, I'm so grateful you're here. I'm so grateful you're finding this of value if you are, and I'm so grateful you're sharing it with others. Send me some stories. I would love to have more stories of when you felt fear and you followed the faith, or fear and you got the nudge, but you didn't follow it either. Those are great things to talk about because everybody needs to have a strong faith to get us through life. I'm Meg Michaelson, and I'm so glad you're here. I look forward to connecting with you next week. Have a beautiful week. Hey, listeners, during this time when we're navigating all of this fast-paced energy, it is so important to find people to walk with you. Check out my website, megmichaelson.com, and click on the Transforming Yourself entry sessions. You can do that on your own. It's great with a partner if you're having relationship issues, because I do counsel one-on-one, but I also counsel partners. Join me. It is a fast way to get more awake and to get out of our own way. And I'd be so honored to work with you. So again, go to my website, megmichaelson.com. I look forward to having sessions with you.